Hi, it's Erica again and welcome to another one of our demos. Today, this is our main card and it's from stamps from PaperArtsy. They're brand new, designed by Lynn Brown, who's done quite a lot of their stamps before. So really nice, lovely decorative stamps that could be used for quite a lot of different purposes. So this is our main card. But the byproducts, the stamping off card that we've used, enabled me to make another 2 cards. So a bit of multitasking, 3 in 1 card. So I'm just going to put these ones to a side for the moment and then introduce you to the stamps. So this is the stamp set. It's ELB 30 and you can see there's some lovely stamps on here. We've got a print of some grass. There's a leaf. Then there's some nice textural background stamps. The text you can read, but I would use it more as a decorative background. This kind of honeycomb. Then we've got the words dream, wish upon a star. There's the numbers, which is great for backgrounds, and the stars. What I like about this set is it's nothing in particular. It's not feminine, it's not masculine, so it could be used for pretty much any kind of card. I can see summer, spring cards from it, but I can sort with autumn colours. You can also do autumnal cards. So it's a really nice all-rounder. So we'll get started. First of all, I want to create the background. That blue background, and I've used the Fresco finish in Mermaid, and I really wanted to show you a looser way of applying paints and inks. It doesn't have to be precise, you don't have to paint right up to the edge. So I'm just going to give it a little shake and then literally just splodge some paint onto the page, and then with a brush, roughly painting out the area. I really enjoy using this technique now. I've used it quite a lot of times because it gives you a frame, which is the white or the cream I've done in that case, but it doesn't look too, you don't like, there's much effort, you know, it's kind of got a kind of rustic charm, let's say that. So again, see, I've done it roughly. It depends how textured your paper is, how much of the paint will show through, but you can see, just spread the paint out as far as it will go. Then I'm going to just drop my brush into some water. Now obviously I've got to let that dry, but I have made one earlier just so we can speed the process along. So there's the card finished, and now I'm going to start with a background. So I'm just going to put that one to one side. Then I'm going to take a sheet of scrap paper and I'm going to start with the text. So what I'm going to do is I've got my scrap paper and I've got my main background. I'm just going to get the stamp. That's the scripty one. And I'm going to put it on a block. But for this, I don't want the first generation of stamping, I want the second. Now, I'll explain what that means. The first inking of a stamp is always its strongest colour, but you can usually get a stamp impression from a second stamping, and that's what we want. We want a subtle background. We don't want a bright blue background. So I'm using this one. It's Wendy Vecchi Ranger ink, archival cornflower blue. The reason I'm using the archival is it's really good on stamping on paint because it dries very quickly. So we just ink up the stamp And then, like I said, stamp once on our spare card and then use the stamp. And as you can see, it gives us a subtle effect. That's just what we want. So we just keep going, stamping, whoops, throwing ink around, stamping once on here, then stamping on there. So there we have our background. So you can see the text. It doesn't have to be perfect, that's what it's about. But we have our background already created now for our other card. So we're ready to go with that one. The next one we want to do is the star. And putting that one on a block, and we are going to use peacock feathers. So the next bit we're going to do is the stars from the set, those ones there. I've put that onto a block, and then I'm using Distress Ink peacock feathers. And again, I'm going to get my spare piece of card because we're using, again, second generation stamping. So we stamp first on here and then onto there. So now this is Distress Ink, so it's quite wet, and I like to swipe the ink onto the stamp rather than dab, because Distress Inks are quite juicy and you end up with too much ink on your stamp. So we'll stamp first on there and there, and you might just get even a third stamping with the Distress Inks. So we just carry on like so. I've finished this one now because I just wanted like a swirl of stars going through the page, so I shall leave that one now. I'm just going to finish off this one and add loads of stars to it. So there we have it. We've got our background ready for our other card, and we've now got this card ready with a full background. This now I'm just going to heat set just to make sure that that is all not going to smudge, because Distress Ink stays wetter for longer. So here we are, it's all ready to go. The next one we're going to use is that tall grass nature print. This one definitely needs a big block for this. So I'm going to use a technique that I've used quite a few times, and it's stamping with a multiple colours and slightly off centre, so it gives a shadow. So first of all, I want to stamp, and we're going to stamp first in mustard seed, Distress Ink, and again swiping on the colour rather than dabbing on, so you don't get an excessive amount of ink. So it's just a case of placing it on the card. And there we go, that's our first colour. I'm just going to take time to just take a wet wipe and clean the stamp off. So I've just got a wet wipe, I'm going to clean that off. And we're ready to go with the next colour. And the next colour is Distress Ink Mowed Lawn. So I'm just going to sweep that colour on. Okay, so this time I'm going to put it where I stamped before, but I'm going to be slightly off. And you should be able to just see the edge of the stamping, and that's how it gives you the shadow effect without looking. I mean, if you tried to do it stamped straight on top, the chances are you'll get the same effect. It always happens with me. So we're just slightly off of the line we've already done. Nice even pressure. And there we go, we've got that lovely kind of 3D image coming. Now, the last colour I want to stamp is the black VersaFine, so I will need to dry this first to make sure, because when you stamp VersaFine onto wet anything, you don't get a result because it doesn't like the wetness underneath, because obviously it's an oil-based ink and oil and water don't match. So I'm just going to dry this, and then I'll come back and we'll stamp that onto there. So here we are. You can pretty much tell when the ink is dry because it stops being shiny. I can see I've missed a bit there, but we're hoping we'll work with that. Okay, so we've got our grass, and that's not got any moisture on it from the wet wipe, so we're ready to go. I'm using the VersaFine in Onyx Black. Just love this ink because it's such a dark colour, but on paint it does need to be heat set. It doesn't take long, you know, just a quick blast with a heat gun, but if you don't, it will smudge. So I don't want to make this too far off of what I've already done already, otherwise it's just gonna look really weird if it's too far off what you've done. So I'm trying to put it somewhere close to the middle of the other two stampings, so it just redefines what the image is. I was going to stamp this on separate card, but I think it looked much better actually on the surface of the card itself. So press it nice and hard because we want a really good impression on this one, and lift it up, and there we go. You've got the lovely look of the grass on that one. I think that's come out quite well. Okay, so we'll put that to one side. Now the actual wording comes from a previous set of Lynn Brown stamps. They're her ones where she puts a lot of text in. I love these because they're so useful for loads of things. I've gone with Make Every Day a Masterpiece just because it's a nice phrase, and it could be an everyday card. It's not for anything in particular. So you could just send this as a just because card. So I'm going to put that on the block. Oh, let's clean that. Put that on the block. And then I've got a little bit of card. Oh, there it is. Couldn't find it. I've got a little piece of card already trimmed to a sort of rough thickness. It's just that it's easier to do it when it's, you just cut it off the big piece of card, and inking this up. So I want to put it roughly about here, So that will go along there, and just roughly work out with my scissors where I wanted it to end. So I probably want it about there. And then the way I made the little V shape is I snipped it in halfway and then just met to the bottom of the snip. There we go. That gives you a fairly accurate V shape, like so. So that one's going to go across there. Now we're back to heating again. I'm going to heat set this and heat set that. So I'll be back in a minute and show you the finishing touches. Okay. So here's my little finishing touch that I wanted to do. I like to edge this piece to make it stand out more and tie the black in with the background. I'm using a Prima. It's fluid chalk, and it's a really lovely, oh, get it open, it's like an iron, it's an iron shape, but it's really great for edging. So just roughly drag it over. I don't mind if I've got kind of messiness. It's not a perfect, if you wanted it absolutely perfect, you just go over it like that, but if you want it a little bit more messy, just drag it. You can see, but the little point makes it so easy to get into those odd shapes. So that's my finishing touch, which I would just stick down. I just wanted to show you an alternative. This was what my original thought was for this card. I stamped it onto a separate card. So this is an alternative you might want to try, especially if you've stamped and your background has come out really dark. You might want to try this idea, and that's stamping it onto card and then cutting it out separately. And you can either use a separate tag for the wording, or you could use this one, and again I've left, it could overlap or it could go underneath, but I quite liked it like that. So those are the two alternatives for this card, but I do really like it like that. So that's the original. Oh, on that one I've got an additional layer which I ought to show you. This background has another little stamped layer on it with this little honeycomb with the Distress Ink cracked pistachio. So that's an alternative as well if you wanted to add an extra layer. So that's our first card done. Our other cards are not far off being done, so I'll be back in a minute. Okay, the first of the spares that we had left over was this stamped background. I've cut it down just for speed, and now I'm going to edge it in the Distress Ink because I want it to all tie together. So again, these are not so easy to edge with, but it does give a nice sort of rough look. Literally, if you just get the edge and just drag it across the card. So just get the edge and just drag it. So that's our first layer. You can see this one's in white, whereas that one's in cream, just to give you something different. The leaves are gorgeous. It's the stamp from that set that I showed you. So just in the same green, just stamp them got a really nice image, and cut it out. And I know it's fair to say that you could probably get a leaf and print the image, but you probably only get about 1 or 2 prints out of that one leaf. This you've got forever. So it's very handy someone else has done it for you. So I'm being careful not to touch it because obviously it's going to be wet because it's distress ink. But for speed, I'm just quickly cutting it out. So there is our 2 leaves, which will go on like so. I just thought it made a nice sort of little frame for a bit of text. That is the right one, for a little bit of text to go in. And again, I'm using the old Lynn Brown stamps. And which one have I used? Live in the Moment. Again, I'm using the black because I like to use the words in black because they make them bold, they make them stand out. So just ink that up, make sure we've got, yes, plenty. And then we're going to stamp that. Because it's a roughly the right size, I'm going to line it up as best I can. There we go, perfect. And like I said, this now is wet. It is better heat set, but for speed, I'm just going to quickly show you. But if you were doing this at home, you probably want to wait for that ink to dry or heat set it. Just to, I've already smudged one by putting my finger right in the middle of it. So caution at all times with this ink. And there we go, that's the first of the spare bits. I mean, really, you've made a card from the spare bits of your paper. Even the bits that I've cut off, I've used them because obviously when you cut them off, they're the right size. That one's got stuff on the back, but if you had blank cards, you can use the leftovers as well. So it's a card from nothing really, so it's nice just to pack up a little selection of cards for, you know, when you've forgotten a card or you need to make something in a hurry. So that's that one finished. Oops, I'll glue it back after. The last one we've got is our stars. And again, I've got a blank card. It's just A4 folded into a square, and we cut off the top. And of course, again, the top can be used for all of your stamping layers. So what I have here is I've already cut it down to size, and I'm just going to do exactly the same as I did last time. Swipe it around the edge, and this will just frame it. And it also saves having to mat and layer another colour behind it. When you do this, literally you have put a frame around it, so it really saves time. And then my little scrap of cut off, I'm going to stamp again. This one, this stamp actually comes from the set Wish Upon a Star. So I'm just going to ink that up, stamp that as neat as I can on the scrap. The reason I do that in that way is it saves me time having to trim such a diddy bit of card. If I can get as neat and as close as possible, I haven't given myself the bother of having to retrim it. And again, just because this one dries quicker, because it's a chalk ink, just edge it with being very careful, because like I said, I would normally heat set these things, but as we're so close to finishing. So there's our card, and there is our wish upon a star. So I hope you enjoyed that. That's all 3 cards from making one, and the other 2 are just a bonus. So thank you very much for watching.